What is going on, everyone? Today I'm going to be giving you a full spoiler-free review for The Marvels. Now, I am going to be talking about spoilers towards the end of the video. I only have a couple things I want to mention though, so there's really no point in making a separate video for this, but we're going to mention those towards the end of the video after we give a rating out of 10 for the film. So let's jump right into this, starting off with the positives. There's honestly not many positives to talk about here, just going to be completely honest right off the bat. It's a fun movie. I hate saying that every time there's like a movie that I don't like that much. Usually for Marvel as well, or like DC, or really any comic book movie, action movie. Usually if I don't really enjoy it that much, the one positive I can usually sometimes say is at least sometimes it was entertaining and fun. I can at least say that. And yes, that is important. That's definitely important, especially for casual viewers. If you don't really care too much about the story and all that stuff, and you just want to watch some CGI stuff going on and flare colors and action, you're gonna get that from this movie. It's also relatively short. It's only like an hour and 40 minutes, which honestly, like, I didn't really enjoy what I was watching for the majority of it, so I'm actually kind of glad it was shorter, because if that was like 2 hours and 30 minutes like that, I would have gone insane. So I'm actually kind of happy it was shorter, but I also think other plot elements could have been better if it was longer, because some things feel a bit rushed. So that's a whole convoluted conversation, but in general, the movie was fun. Iman Vellani as Miss Marvel is fantastic here. I think she was great in her own show as well, which was such a shame because I didn't really like the show too much itself, but I think her casting as Miss Marvel and just her character itself, she's great. She's entertaining. They do a couple of cool things with the character here, not nearly as much as her show. I do kind of think I prefer her in her show, but she's still really great here, and I enjoyed that. And as for the other two main characters, obviously Monica Rambeau and Carol Danvers, or, you know, Captain Marvel, I think they're decent here. I don't think they're great, and not in terms of the acting. I think the acting's fine. They're both great actresses, but I just don't necessarily think in this movie either of them were kind of giving it their all. It kind of felt just like a very standard performance, which is totally fine. They don't have to be giving an Oscar-worthy performance in a Marvel film, but I do think, at least for the characters, it's probably the best version of both of those characters we've ever seen, because I mean, the only other time we've seen Captain Marvel was, of course, in her own film, you know, the first film, which I thought she was really bad in that. Not Brie Larson as an actress, but I mean, the character was just so bland and boring, and she's at least better here. It's kind of in a weird way though, because she does a complete 180 with her character, where she's, you know, very serious and literally like insanely emotionless in the first film. But in this one, she's all of a sudden very playful and kind of goofy and weird and kind of awkward. Like, it's a very different character, but it's at least more entertaining and at least some more you can kind of latch onto and connect to, at least, which I think is better than how she was in the prior film. And of course, she was also, you know, a little bit in Avengers Endgame, and she was, again, kind of the same like she was in her own film there. And then for Monica Rambeau, I also didn't like that character in WandaVision too much, but she's a lot better here. You also got Nick Fury, who was nice to see, but I know there's so many positives I'm saying here that also have like negatives attached to it. That's just the nature of the movie. Just hear me out. It's great to see Nick Fury, but this probably is the worst version of Nick Fury we've ever seen in the MCU. Every other version of Nick Fury, every other movie he's been in, he's been a lot better. So yeah, that's just the nature of the movie again. It's just what it is. But it was cool to see him. I enjoyed his presence here. And there's a couple of world-building things that this movie does later in the film that I did really like. There's also this big plot thread about the three characters constantly shifting their powers, or shifting their places when they use their powers. And it was a cool concept. I liked it. It was actually one of the first things we heard about it, the movie, back when it was first announced. That was literally the first thing they said about it. It was going to be a movie about, you know, Monica, Carol, and Kamala constantly changing places every time they use their powers. And I thought it was cool, and it made for some really inventive action scenes, so it was definitely a cool aspect. I just think they definitely underutilized it, and in some moments it was like very clear that they should use it in that moment, but they don't. So a little underused, but still a cool concept. And I really liked the setting of the movie. We kept going to a bunch of different planets, which is great for the MCU, because I feel like other than obviously Guardians of the Galaxy and some of the Thor movies, we don't get to explore other planets within the main universe all that often. You know, we've recently been doing this multiversal stuff where we're exploring how multiverse is affecting Earth and everything like that, but also just having movies on Earth itself as well. But I always wanted to see more stuff that's going on in the galaxy, on other planets and stuff. And this movie had some of that, so that was cool. And just speaking on like parts of the movie that I really enjoyed the most, I think the first act was by far the best. The first 30 minutes of the movie is genuinely actually really great. And by that time, when like the 30 minutes was up, I was thinking to myself, this is a pretty good movie. Like I was genuinely really enjoying it. But then let's get into the negatives. The second and third acts are not good. They are a jumbled mess. You can tell this movie was not thought through all the way. You can tell it was made and then reshot and then reshot some more and then reshot some more because it is all over the place. And I can't really blame Nia DaCosta, who's the director, because she is a good director. I've seen her other projects, some of them, and she's great at what she does. She understands how to shoot a movie and make it flow well. And I just don't think this movie has that. A lot of scenes are cut in such a weird way where 1 minute you'll be somewhere and the next minute you'll be somewhere completely different, but it doesn't really work. Like it kind of just like feels like scenes from completely different projects that are kind of smushed together and have the same characters. Like it's weird and I can't really describe it. And that only really happens in the second and third act. I did not feel that in the first act. The first act felt like a complete thing that made sense. But once you got to the second act, there's like a certain point, and if you watch the movie, it was around the part with the scrolls, and that's not really spoiling anything. Saying scrolls are in the movie is not a spoiler, but when they started to show more of the scrolls, and you'll see them later on, that is when I was like, we're starting to get weird here. You know, it just didn't really flow well. The pacing got messed up, and towards the end of the movie, it felt so rushed. It felt like barely anything happened in this movie. And not even just in terms of the plot, but also in terms of the characters. I don't feel like there's much character growth here. There's 1 or 2 lines of dialogue between specifically Carol and Monica that I think were pretty good and were developing for both those characters. And then of course you have bonding between all 3 of the girls. And I do like those scenes. Those are great scenes. They're fun. They're, you know, just seeing them mess around, have fun. But at the end of the day, they don't really do much for the characters. And by the end of this movie, it really does feel like a movie that is just made purely for fun. And that's fine. Like, I'm not saying that's a bad thing. I'm not saying that makes it the worst movie ever, but I do prefer when movies have some more weight to them. They have some more, I don't know, something to latch onto and actually think about. And I know it's a Marvel movie, but a lot of the Marvel movies do that. They do. So the fact that this movie pretty much doesn't do much at all, I, of course, was a little disappointed. And I did have some expectations because I thought the trailers looked decent. I didn't think they looked amazing, but I thought they looked decent enough. And like I said, I did like Miss Marvel's character a lot in her own show. So I wanted to see what they can do with her here. And like I said, there's a couple of cool moments. Doesn't really go much beyond that though. It's also a very inconsistent movie. Like I said before, there's a lot of moments that are really genuinely good. And it's specifically in terms of like directing, there's some scenes that are shot so well. Like there's a couple action scenes where the choreography is off the charts, like some really cool camera movements and the way the characters are moving. I'm sure they use some CGI there to kind of spice it up, but in general, it looks great. And I'm like, this is awesome stuff. This is great. But then you have some moments, specifically action scenes, that are some of the worst choreographed action scenes I have ever seen in the MCU, which is insane to me, like how you can jump from that to that, which is why I really do feel like a lot of things were reshot, and there's probably some stuff that might have been shot without much, you know, overseeing of Nia DaCosta. Maybe some certain things left in that she didn't want to be left in. I'm not sure, I'm just guessing, but I don't think she would have left some of these scenes in, and they kind of just did. They felt so out of place. There's also a lot of like overly goofy moments here, and I'm all for that when it's done right. You know, Guardians of the Galaxy, those movies have a lot of goofy moments. Deadpool, a lot of goofy moments. You know, when they throw in some really comedic things that sometimes go a little too far, I'm okay with that. But it has to be done right. And this movie does one thing that I thought was one of the dumbest things. It was so goofy, like way too goofy. And it just was executed so weirdly, and it goes on for way too long. It made me chuckle like once when it first happened, but then it just goes on and on and on. And I'm not going to spoil what it is, but I was just like, what is going on here? Like, sure, it's fun. I was laughing about how stupid it was, but just for how it works in the film, it just not good. The villain was awful. I genuinely think this is one of the worst villains in the MCU. Of course, it is Dar-Benn is her name. Very weird name. I'd never heard of this villain before. I'm sure she's in the comics or something, but her motivation is very one note. And when you get to the movie and you get to everything that happens later on, you kind of realize that this whole thing could have been solved so easily. and it wasn't. And instead you have this, again, very one-note character just go around trying to take resources from other planets, and that's pretty much it. She's not interesting whatsoever. They don't have any sort of dialogue with her that makes me go, oh, that's an interesting thing for this character. No. She's just there. She's just there to be the villain of the movie, and that's it. The dialogue also wasn't that great either. Like I said, there were some moments with really good dialogue, some moments where the dialogue felt like it was written by AI. I'm not even kidding. It wasn't for me. This movie wasn't for me. It wasn't that enjoyable, and I'm totally fine if you enjoyed it, because I'm sure a lot of people did. I did see a lot of people loving this movie, and I'm so happy for you that you loved it. I'm so happy you think it's amazing, and that's all good. But for me, just wasn't it. It just wasn't it. And it's such a shame, because there's going to be such awful discourse about this movie online, as it usually happens with female-led comic book projects, where you'll have one group that's just going to constantly hate on it just because there was a female lead. A lot of awful people like that, unfortunately. And then you're also going to have another group of people who are just going to see anyone that disliked the movie and just automatically assume that they disliked it because the lead was a female. And the discourse all around that's just not good. I think we should just all not jump to conclusions. We should all not jump to those assumptions. And we should also just be decent human beings in general. Because before this movie even came out, I was on Twitter, I was looking around, I would see some really great people I know, whether they're YouTubers or critics or whatever it may be, just give a very honest review on this movie, whether it's negative or positive, and they'll be getting just bombarded with hate. If they like the movie, they're apparently a shill, and they're just all that stuff. And then if they don't like the movie, they're, oh, you must be sexist, you must hate women. It's like, what are you talking about now? Like, this stuff is just, this discourse is awful, and I hate how this only ever really happens for like comic book projects and kind of Star Wars as well. I guess the pop culture, like really popular stuff. You don't see this happening with like smaller films or even back like films that are a bit older, like from the 80s and 90s. It doesn't happen with that. Why does it only happen with modern day blockbusters? I have no idea, but the discourse is always so exhausting, because it's like, why? It doesn't make any sense to me. For a final rating, I'm going to give this a 5 out of 10, which that's not that awful. I'm not saying this movie's terrible. I really don't think any MCU movie is terrible. You could do a lot worse than a 5 out of 10. You could do so much worse than that. A 5 out of 10 for me is actually not like the worst thing ever. But for an MCU movie, yeah, this is definitely towards the bottom of MCU. It might be my least favorite MCU movie, or at least bottom 3 is my guess. It just didn't do anything for me. Nothing. Like, I just went into it and just, I don't know. It is what it is. It's not the end of the world. It's just one movie, but still, I really hope Marvel can just come back from this. And I do think they will, because there's still been so many great Marvel projects the past few years. I mean, just off the top of my head, I loved Doctor Strange 2. I loved Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3. I loved Shang-Chi. I loved Black Panther, Wakanda Forever. I thought, what was the other ones? I guess the TV shows, you got Loki was great. You go to Spider-Man No Way Home was solid. There's a lot of solid stuff the MCU's been doing. I just think this one wasn't it. This is just one movie that just didn't work for me, and unfortunately is gonna be towards the bottom of my rankings. And that's fine. It's not a big deal. But now let's get into these spoilers. Now, there's only like one thing I really want to talk about, and that's the post-credit scene, of course, because I mean, other than that, there's really not many other spoilers to mention in the movie. You could talk about, I guess, the specifics of the movie, but I don't really care about the specifics. So you get the post-credit scene, and of course, yes, there's the cameo appearance of Beast. Now, you also have, before the post-credits, you also had Kate Bishop show up, which the only one that wasn't spoiled for me was Kate Bishop. I had no idea she was going to be in this, and that was cool. I actually really liked that little scene. My only thing is, I've never been crazy about the Young Avengers idea. It's just not an idea that makes sense to me. I feel like it's such a gimmick. It's like, oh, let's just make an Avengers with all the kids. Like, it's such a gimmick to me, because in what world would that be the most useful team you can put together? And why? Why, like, gate yourself to just having kids? I don't know. I've never read the Young Avengers comics. Maybe they're masterpieces. I've just kind of seen snippets of it. But in general, the idea to me never really made much sense. But if they're going to do that, sure, hopefully it'll be decent. I guess I guess it'll be decent if they do that. If they don't do that and it's just a tease for something else, cool as well. I don't know. And then of course we had the post-credit scene, which not only had X-Men's Beast, but also had Monica Rambeau's mother. What was her first name again? I don't remember. But it was the Captain Marvel of that universe. Now, what universe exactly is it? We don't really know. It could be the Fox X-Men universe, but I don't think it is because, well, Captain Marvel never existed there. But then again, she could have, and we just never knew about it. Maybe she appeared later on. And also, the Fox X-Men universe has a lot of different universes within them technically, so that gets confusing. I don't really know. I guess it doesn't really matter what universe it is. All you gotta know is it's a universe with the X-Men. A lot of people were speculating it's the universe from Doctor Strange 2 because that version of Captain Marvel was there, and then also, of course, Charles Xavier was alive there as well, and they did mention Charles Xavier in this post-credit scene. But I personally think it could be any universe. It really doesn't matter what universe it is. All you need to know is it's a universe with X-Men and with Captain Marvel, as Monica Rambeau's mother. That's all you need to know. And I thought it was a cool little reveal to see X-Men in the, MCU finally. And of course we had literally the backdrop had the X logo and it was literally, they were in the place. So that was cool. I like that. And of course it teases things to come in the future, which I'm looking forward to. It's not like the X-Men that we're going to be getting probably the official MCU X-Men, but it's going to be the multiverse X-Men, the one that we're probably going to see in Secret Wars, and we're going to probably see, in all these multiversal things going on in these next few movies. So, or I guess these next few years of movies, really. And I'm looking forward to all that. But I absolutely hate the fact that they decided to make Beast CGI. That looked so bad. Well, it didn't look so bad. It just looked like, why not just do it practically? Well, you could have done a practical effect Beast perfectly fine because they did it in the original X-Men and it looked great. You do not need to make Beast CGI. That makes no sense. Whatever. I'm not going to complain too much about it, but I just thought it was dumb. I just was like, what are they doing here? What are they doing here? But all in all, that's really all I had to say about this movie. Like I said, 5 out of 10 is a decent score in my opinion. I don't think it's terrible. It's just not a movie I felt anything from. That's pretty much it. So hopefully you guys enjoy. Let me know your thoughts down in the comment section. I will see you on my next one. Peace out.